On Tuesday, May 16, 2006, Alison Rivera gets ready for a work trip out of town. Her husband, Rey Rivera, makes her breakfast before she leaves. They say their goodbyes, and Alison gets in the car to start the 3-hour drive to Richmond, Virginia. Staying at the house that evening is Claudia, a colleague of Alison's, staying the night while she is away. Now, at around 6:30 p.m., Claudia hears Rey's phone ring. Now, she cannot make out the conversation, but it is brief. Suddenly, she hears Rey rushing out of the house. He doesn't tell her where he's going or when he will be back. Claudia eventually goes to bed, assuming Rey had something important to take care of. But at around 5 a.m. the next morning, she goes to check on him. His bed is empty. He never came home. Now, she immediately phones Alison, who heads back to Baltimore, knowing in her gut that something is terribly wrong. When Alison arrives on May 17th, she reports Rey missing and a massive search begins. She's not alone for long. Rey's brother, Angel, flies in from Florida the same day, and his parents arrive shortly after. The Rivera home quickly transforms into a command center. Gathering around the dining table, family and friends frantically trace Rey's last known steps. They print thousands of flyers detailing Rey's towering 6'5" or 1.96 meter frame and Alison's missing black Toyota Sequoia SUV, spreading across Baltimore to tape them to storefronts and bus stops. For days, the search yields nothing. There is no activity on Rey's phone, and his bank cards sit untouched. Alison phones everyone who may have information about Rey. One of those calls is to Porter Stansberry, Rey's close high school friend who had originally convinced him to move to Baltimore to work for his financial publishing company. Porter leverages his influence to push for answers, offering a cash reward and hiring a private investigator to search for his missing friend.
On Monday, May 22nd, Alison's parents are slowly driving through the Mount Vernon neighborhood of Baltimore when they spot it. Alison's black Toyota Sequoia. It is parked in a commercial lot off St. Paul Street, sitting in the shadow of a grand, historic 14-story building known as the Belvedere Hotel. Tucked under the wiper blade is a parking ticket printed on Wednesday, May 17, the morning after Rey vanished. The ticket proves the SUV arrived the very evening Rey sprinted out of his house, and the discovery of the car injects new energy into the search. 3 of Rey's colleagues, desperately wanting to help, head up to the 5th floor of the nearby parking garage. They think the elevated vantage point will give them a bird's eye view of the surrounding alleys below. From the upper deck, they look out over the rooftops, and then they freeze. On the lower flat roof of the Belvedere Hotel's 2nd floor annex, punched clean through the roof, is a dark 40-inch or 1 meter hole. And sitting right at the edge of that opening is a pair of glasses, a cell phone, and flip-flops. And a wave of pure dread washes over them as they realize it could only be Rey's. Then police accompany the hotel concierge to unlock the door to the room below. It is an empty meeting room that had recently been vacated by a church group. And as they approached, the heavy smell of decomposition filled the air. Inside, directly underneath the hole in the roof, is Rey Rivera's body. He had been there for 8 days.
The medical examiner's autopsy reveals the sheer violent force of the impact. Rey's body suffered catastrophic trauma, deeply fractured ribs, severely punctured lungs, and a torn aorta. But as investigators look closer, the physical evidence takes a truly baffling turn. His cell phone and glasses, found on the roof right next to the opening Rey allegedly fell through, are completely intact. The glass screen on his phone is not cracked, and it is still fully operational. The lenses on his glasses do not have a single scratch. Homicide detectives are stunned. If a 250-pound or 113-kilogram man plunges hundreds of feet through a commercial roof, the fragile items in his pockets do not land neatly on the deck without a scratch. To many, it looked unmistakably staged. A few feet away, police find Rey's shoes. One of his flip-flops has a broken strap and fresh scuff marks on the tip, suggesting he may have been dragged. Even worse, investigators have no plausible explanation for how Rey could have gone through that roof. There are only two towering structures over the lower annex. The first is the parking garage, but forensic analysis quickly rules it out. The horizontal distance to the hole is simply too great. A human being cannot jump outward at that trajectory. That leaves the main 14-story roof of the Belvedere Hotel itself. But the physics here are just as impossible. To hit that exact spot, Rey would have had to clear a massive horizontal distance of roughly 20 feet or 6 meters outward from the ledge. Crime scene dynamics conclude that a man of Rey's size would have needed to sprint at over 11 miles or 18 kilometers per hour and launch himself with terrifying momentum to clear that gap. In the pitch black of night, on a treacherous rooftop, wearing loose rubber flip-flops. It defies logic. To make matters worse, the Belvedere's hotel security camera system was virtually useless due to chronic building-wide malfunctions plaguing the historic 1903 property long before that night. There was zero footage.
With the crime scene making no sense, investigators turn to Rey's home office, where Allison makes a bizarre discovery. Taped securely to the back of Rey's computer desk, hidden inside a plastic sleeve, is a folded piece of paper. The note is typed in an impossibly small font and cut into a tiny strip. It opens with, "Brothers and sisters, right now, around the world, volcanoes are erupting. What an awesome sight. Whom virtue unites, death will not separate." Below that is a chaotic list of Hollywood actors, directors, and close friends, including Porter Stansberry. It lists films dealing with secret societies and mind control like The Game and The Matrix. Rey ends the note by writing about a great game and asks for his soul to be made 1 year younger. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit determined that while the text was deeply unusual, it contained no farewells or expressions of despair. They concluded it was not a suicide note. Was Rey experiencing a sudden psychological break, or was he just a creative storyteller trying to leave a coded message? To this day, the meaning remains unknown. Then comes the most frustrating breakthrough. Police traced the 6:30 p.m. phone call that sent Rey rushing out of his house. It came directly from the switchboard of Stansberry and Associates. And because it originated from an internal switchboard, the tracking system could only identify the main corporate line, and it was impossible to determine which specific desk or extension dialed Rey's number. All we know is that someone inside that building knew exactly what to say to make Rey sprint out of his front door.
What happened next divided public opinion sharply. In the wake of the discovery, Rey's widow, Allison, his brother Angel, and the original Baltimore homicide detective Michael Byer all publicly stated that they ran into a brick wall when trying to interview Rey's colleagues. They maintained that the company's legal counsel actively shielded the staff and discouraged workers from speaking freely with investigators. However, both Porter Stansberry and corporate representatives strongly pushed back against this narrative. They stated that the restriction was strictly an internal public relations policy advising staff not to talk to the media to prevent a press circus, and that there was never any directive barring employees from cooperating with the law. In fact, company records indicate that Porter urged his staff to contact police with information, and he pointed to his own formal voluntary interview with the lead detective on June 23, 2006 as proof of his cooperation. Furthermore, Porter later raised a critical defense regarding the mysterious 6:30 p.m. phone call. He claimed that on the exact evening Rey was lured away, the company's leadership and its entire core staff were away on the Eastern Shore for a mandatory corporate retreat, leaving the office completely empty. Yet, when the Netflix documentary Unsolved Mysteries aired in 2020, Stansberry declined to appear on camera, citing the company's long-standing media policy. For millions of viewers, that decision cast a long shadow, even though declining a documentary interview is not the same as refusing to cooperate with police. To this day, the specific person who dialed Rey's phone from that corporate switchboard has never stepped forward. In the weeks prior to his disappearance, Allison and Angel recall that Rey's behavior had subtly changed. He seemed deeply worried, anxious, and hypervigilant, as if something heavy was weighing on his mind. Then the paranoia turned physical. Someone had tampered with a window on their back porch, leaving clear signs of a forced entry attempt. And in the middle of the night, just days before he vanished, their home security alarm went off on 2 separate occasions. Both times, Rey sprinted through the house with a baseball bat, terrified of an intruder. Police checked the perimeter but found nothing. It seems like Rey believed someone was watching him, and that someone was coming for him. Some believe his death was a suicide, open and shut. But Rey was happily married, excited about his future and making plans to move back to California. He had everything to live for. The prevailing theory held by his family is that Rey stumbled onto a financial secret so dangerous that it cost him his life. When the medical examiner sat down to complete Rey Rivera's death certificate, the science simply wouldn't allow them to check the suicide box. And it wasn't just a gut feeling. The evidence wouldn't support it. The autopsy revealed that Rey's shins were broken in a way that was entirely inconsistent with a vertical feet-first impact from a 14-story fall. The fractures suggested a different angle of force, or a separate localized trauma that a straight fall onto a flat roof simply could not explain. And then there were his personal items. A man does not plunge 130 feet or 40 meters through a reinforced roof and leave his glasses and cell phone sitting beside that hole without a single scratch. The medical examiner could not ignore the total picture of the crime scene. Because science could not definitively prove whether Rey's death was intentional, accidental, or homicidal, the manner of his death is officially listed as undetermined. Nearly 20 years later, the case is still open. The family still has no answers, and the person who made that phone call has never stepped forward. Some cases haunt us, and this is definitely one of them.
What do you think happened to Rey Rivera? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And if you want to hear more true crime stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly episodes. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week.